Hey guys, it's Dustin. Welcome to another character spotlight from Sacred Shadows and Latent Light. Today I'm going to talk about the deuteragonist Vesta Lowell. Vesta is a single child to a two-parent family in Napa Valley. Perhaps a bit sheltered, as with other students, her growth involves developing a more rounded and nuanced understanding of the rest of the world, and especially those who are different than her. I mean, she's kind of a foil to Elliot. Whereas Elliot wants to be a cynic, he naively believes that life is not good, it's not worth risking, and that he's special or wise because he knows this. Vesta is the opposite. She's naive in a different or more conventional way. Her conflict is she doesn't really believe or understand that there is evil in the world, and that not everybody comes to you in good faith. Whenever she hears of bad things happening, she thinks, okay, well, not really. Whereas Elliot, he's kind of a would-be Raskolnikov, kind of a rationalist who has to learn that there is something to transcendence and to romantic conceptions of life in college, and life can be ascendant. Vesta has to bring her romantic ideas and dreams of the future kind of down to the ground. She's more of an Alyosha. She has to learn that part of those high-minded moments of transcendent experience, like the places that Shakespeare can take you, those moments are not automatic, nor are they shared with everybody, nor are they painless and without struggle. And in fact, in order to reach those high moments, you need to be able to see what's on the ground. Both of them have to learn that there's not a hard dichotomy between rationalism and romanticism, let's say. But ultimately, she's better equipped for dealing with her conflict because, unlike Elliot, she knows and admits that there's a lot she doesn't know. And that humility that enables her to mitigate the internal and external conflicts that come her way. It's the wisdom of humility that keeps her learning that Elliot kind of stumbles over it. So she learns the same thing that Elliot has to ultimately learn, but it's more organic and internal on her part. And it's less of a shock to her in the end. She still doesn't foresee everything that's going to happen to her. That greatness and optimism and that ascendant attitude that she has towards life does attract enemies. Don't want to give spoilers. So the book actually opens from her perspective. That she's been asked by her Shakespeare professor, Rydar Colson, to attend his production proposal. That he asked her to be there as a costume designer originally, but at the end of the opening scene, he asks her to be Princess Catherine in Henry V. So even though he changes which role she plays, her devotion to him and to being involved in the play, it remains constant. We're never really too worried that she's going to step down from the play, even though there actually are pressures for her to step down from this play, but that actually motivates her to do it more. But a lot of the early scenes are from her, they're really introspective because she's so thoughtful. She reminisces on her high school time, her ideas of what college would be, like, which optimism and stuff, and how they have or haven't lived up to it. Except for one person, Rydar Colson, and her Shakespeare professor. He's not just teaching the material to teach the material, but he actually thinks it's worth uplifting, that Shakespeare's not just about the grade, but like this can give you a scaffold to climb either mountains you want to climb or out of valleys you've been thrust into. But she doesn't understand this explicitly, but she does recognize it, and it attracts her to him, and she still has to learn the weight of what it means to be a hero worshiper, that if you link yourself to something great, there will be more people who will try to destroy it. But anyway, she does slowly give a structural foundation to her optimistic view of the world, which is really tested. She respects and idealizes Colson a lot. At some point, I was going to have there be kind of is she attracted to him romantically, small r romantically, but I decided to cut it because she's too introspective for that to be believable. For her, I mean, she's like, there was a point where all this emotion that I felt towards this professor, I thought it was romance, but it actually was bigger. She was treating him as an ideal, not as a actual romantic possibility. Although she admits that's part of what I want in romance is someone who will provoke me to higher things. I mean, she does eventually get a love interest in the book. It shouldn't be surprising who it is. It's not Elliot. She does take his way of reading Shakespeare and his saying these things matter. Her big thing is that she gives people the benefit of the doubt, and that's a really great tool that she has. That's what gives her the ability to interact with and be understanding of and be disarming towards people who she might disagree with in the end. And this is, I think, a piece of wisdom that she has, is that she always approaches a new perspective as if it could be true. Now, she does learn that there are limits to that, because that assumes a good faith. We're trying to reach a place of mutual understanding. You don't play conversation if someone's trying to play war. So she does learn the limitations of that. So her neighbor early on in the book is actually Cora Madison, who I've mentioned a little bit. And so she learns from this strong, beautiful, and at times brash young woman. But she, in the whatever conflicts, as with most places earlier in the books, she assumes that whatever conflict is there, it's hers. The contradiction or mistake is hers to learn. Like, she is humble enough to no, I'm going to assume that I need to make this situation better. She's not a people pleaser, but I mean, she just doesn't want to presume upon, oh, I disagree with you, that means you are wrong. She's like, well, let me chew on what they're giving me, which that's a good place for her to start. But she's able to suspend her own, while at the same time thinking deeply about, what do I think of this? One of the early conflicts with Cora regarding the plays, the history plays, and Vesta's being casted originally as Princess Catherine, who doesn't, if you read Henry V, she's not the biggest lines number of character, but she recognizes that, wait a minute, she has the yes or no to everything Prince Hal, now King Henry V, has done. Like, she's the final task. Whereas Hercules had all these tasks, Princess Catherine is the final up or down to Henry V, which makes her pretty freaking important to Vesta. That actually gives her a lot of power, or she thinks it gives Catherine a lot of power. And that's part of one of Vesta's perspectives, is she doesn't agree with, even though she loves Cora, she doesn't agree with her implicit assumption that things like receptivity and tactful passivity and beauty, which aren't synonyms, nor are they constants, all those things don't necessarily equal weakness and femininity. She is able to think differently from as situations need. I mean, there are plenty of times where Vesta learns to stand up and, whether or not I'm speaking literally or metaphorically, throw a punch. But at the same time, she is able to look at the nuances of things. She's able to suspend her own reaction to look deeper into characters like Princess Catherine or Prince Hal, and even Professor Colson himself. And it's a huge boon to her. It's a real tool that she learns to use, this pausing her own judgment to make sure she understands the other person's perspective, because she wants to give them the benefit of the doubt so that she can learn, so she can grow from them. I mean, she has to learn that, as with any value, that kind of liberal self-restraint and non-judgment, it can become dangerous if turned into a pathological constant. I mean, she learns that, okay, there are times when you shouldn't do that. Even then, she's able to learn it because she is able to sit and listen before she really talks. Although when she talks, it's a hammer. But she does the same thing to books and to characters. That's why, whereas every other character in the book has kind of one author or one book that they're linked to, she has several. She, at different times, she reads a lot of the ones, especially banned books. Over the summer, between the opening spring and their junior year, she sets out to read a lot of the high school reading books that are starting to be banned, they're kind of become cliches in the culture, like Lord of the Flies and Gatsby and Huck Finn and To Kill a Mockingbird. But she recognizes, wow, there's something to these, and I wish a college student had come into our high school class to tell us why they're important. Like an equal telling us it's important. In that way, she learns really what Colson is implicitly trying to teach all of them, the virtue of the Nietzschean questioning of assumed values. Not just question them, Nietzsche says throw them onto the fire. Let's melt our idols to see if they're gods or if they're idols. You might land in the same place of belief, of evaluation, but you'll be sure about it. It'll be moving from ethos of received tradition, oh, Shakespeare's good because people told me, to, no, I know it's good because this is what it did for me, and this is what it taught me, and this is what it helped me do. This logos position of my ears have heard the truth, but now my eyes have seen it. And so she succeeds in doing that, which is one of the larger points in the book that these young characters need to learn, and which Rydar himself had to go through. So yeah, there's a lot of abstract stuff about Vesta. She's a beautiful young character. I mean, she might be my favorite character because I trust her so much. I mean, if you understand what I mean. That doesn't mean she's without fault, but when I think about what conflicts might I want, my high schoolers, or God forbid, my kids to someday avoid, I don't have to worry too much about Vesta, as an example. Although the point of writing a book is not to give a propagandistic, like, this is how you should live. But it is to deal with actual conflicts and to learn and to see what the characters do. And I was actually surprised with several things that happened to Vesta. Her love for reading is amazing. It's actually where we get the title from the book, because in one of the opening scenes during the fall, it's out here in Southern California, it gets very windy. We get the Santa Ana windstorm, which means Christmas is coming, which is a week away, God. But anyway, she's out reading, and if you want to know everything about Vesta, she's reading an unabridged Les Miserables. It's 2,700 freaking pages. But anyway, she lands on this place where Hugo is describing the growth of culture not as a structure or a tower that we build, but as a mine that certain individuals that we are constantly excavating. For in the sacred shadows there lies latent light. She doesn't think anything of that title, but it is in her scenes that the title is like kind of embedded in my book. It's really her and Elliot's perspective, or the thing they have to learn is that it's in the shadows, it's in the places you're not looking, that the light is waiting to be found. And she really shows that and accepts that early on, like, this is something I want to fight for, and which actually brings out some unexpected passion from her. Like, she learns herself that she might be a bit of a fighter, especially as the campaign against the plague starts, and no one likes being called the things that they get called and stuff, but she really, because she knows she's not. She's generally polite, and she learns not to automatically project her politeness and her naivete and her general, like, happy regard for the world onto other people automatically. But she also learns to take pleasure and have a reason for taking pleasure in her life. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Comment below if there's anything you want me to talk about or anything you're curious about. I might do some spotlights on different aspects of the book or other characters. All right, talk to you guys.